Hello and welcome to Talking with Fast People. My name is host Eric, and today we're doing something like You Make the Call. Which is an idea I was having here as I was considering some hypothetical ethical questions. So today's story is about a young man named Franklin. He's 27 years old, and he's found himself in an odd position. He works at the pet store. There's this one customer who comes in, and she's very attractive older woman. She's 33, so he thinks of her as an older woman, and he's 27. And the only problem is, he likes her name, Stacy. Franklin and Stacy. He likes that. He thinks it sounds cute together. He's thinking, maybe I can get on this Stacy girl. The only problem is, she's Mrs. Stacy Jenkins. Uh-oh, big problem. I mean, he thought it would be a big problem, but it turns out Mrs. Stacy Jenkins is kind of down hot to trot, as they say. Down to spread, as they say. In debate. It means go fast. Your mind is filthy. It means speed read. It's a conjunction for speed read. It means talk really fast. Anyway, down to get anally fucked. Your mind is in the gutter. But, oh, wait, no, my bad on that one. Alright, so Mrs. Jenkins makes it very clear to Franklin. Stacy says, Franklin, please call me Stacy. You might think of me as a cougar, but I've stayed out of the sun, and I look even younger than you. And Franklin goes, ooh la la, Stacy Jenkins. And, well, he thinks about it, so he talks to his friends, like, hey, he talks to his friend, Brock. Franklin and Brock are good friends, okay? And he talks to his friend Brock, and Brock's like, well, I mean, if you want to get on her, because, after all, you're not married to anybody, and not your commitment you're breaking, and who knows, maybe she has her reasons or whatever. I don't know. Do you know the guy? Is he your friend? If he's your friend or something, don't do it for sure, because that would be fucked up. But if you don't even know who he is or anything, well, she owns her body, not him, so she can do with it what she wants, and it seems fun, you go for it. And so old Franklin from the pet store says, okay, fine. And the next time Stacy comes in, she's like, oh, are you getting off right now? I see you taking off your apron. He's like, yeah, I am. I'm finishing up here. And then we're going to go to your house and I'm going to get off again, baby. And she's like, ooh, Franklin. That reminds me of when I bought the Pomeranian. Such a tingle up my spine. And they go back to Stacy's. It turns out Stacy's husband is away for work for the weekend. He's had to travel to San Diego. He is a plumbing contractor's materials providing warehouse kind of business thing, and he went to one of those conferences about that, and all the newest, this year's newest plumbing technology all laid out on tables. It was something to behold, Stacy, he said when he got back. Stacy, you would not believe the new Langston wrenches they got there. They have some that are solar powered. Can you believe it? And Stacy's feeling pretty filled with guilt and shame at this point because she had sex with Franklin while her husband, what was his name? Did he have a name? I don't remember. We'll call him Ted. While Ted was in San Diego. She said, yeah, Ted. That's great, honey. What is wrong? What's wrong, Stacy? Is something wrong? No, Ted. Just go on, tell me more about the wrenches. Well, okay. So, yeah, they had solar-powered ones. They had lithium-battery ones. They also had ones that were hydrogen-powered, but you had to plug them into the sun directly. Stacey, are you even listening to me? Oh, yes, Ted, I am. Uh-oh. Problems in paradise. Now, meanwhile, who's not having that problem? Franklin. Franklin's back at the pet store. And he's talking to his coworker and friend Brock again. And instead of saying, oh my God, I'm so filled with shame and anxiety, he's going, high five, Brock, I totally fucked that bitch. Oh yes, lay in the puss. Now, the question in this video is a question about Franklin. Did Franklin do the wrong thing in having sex with Stacey? Here's my take on it after a lot of thought about this hypothetical as a good sort of test question on ethics. It presents a lot of different elements of ethical consideration to factor in. So it's a good question to consider and a complicated one to answer. The conclusion that I have come to is that it's fine for Franklin to sleep with Stacey only under certain conditions. One of those conditions might be that Ted, for example, is very violent, and every time that Stacey tries to talk to Ted about leaving, then Ted hits her. And so Ted's not allowing her to get out of the relationship in a fair way. He's not allowing himself to be fairly dumped. He's insisting that he be treated unfairly by refusing to fulfill his end of the reciprocal burdens. Now, of course, he's also engaging in rights violations. Not just contractual forfeitures, but rights forfeitures are therefore necessitated. So, if he's engaged in rights violations, then he forfeits any claim to being treated fairly because he's engaged in criminality. At that point, at least some of his rights are forfeit, and we as a society have an obligation to make sure that we don't abuse his status of forfeited right. But regardless, that would be an exception or a situation in which it would be okay for Franklin to sleep with Stacey because Stacey has no other means afforded to her of rebellion, of the assertion of her own sovereignty. Another possible way that it could be okay for Stacey to sleep with Franklin and vice versa is if Stacey metaphysically is completely checked out of that relationship such that she knows she's leaving, she's made it clear to Ted that she's leaving, and that she considers herself more or less separated, and that he should no longer deem himself to have claim upon her fidelity sexually, even though they're still married. That's fine. Marriage is the real part of marriage, has nothing to do with the legal designation of marriage. You could be legally married, but if you told the other person already, we are divorced as far as I'm concerned, and I am not being faithful to you, or I'm not ascribing a promise. I'm not making any promises about being faithful. I'm not currently having sex with another human being right in front of you, but I will at some point have sex with somebody other than you, and I'm not promising not to. If that conversation's been had, then it's definitely okay because that person's not married. However, there may be varying degrees of hybrid status of the state of a relationship that would make it acceptable for Franklin to make the choice to sleep with her. Here's the problem that Franklin faces, though. He doesn't really know. He has no way of knowing what that relationship is actually like. He doesn't know what Stacey and Ted's relationship is like. Stacey's going to tell him what Stacey feels is important to her. Now, she may or may not be fair in her assessments of Ted. She may or may not be correct objectively in her descriptions of what's happened, or anything. You don't know. Now, of course, Franklin goes, but Stacy's great. I totally trust her. She wouldn't lie about shit like that. Fine. But remember, if your moral legitimacy hinges on a lack of transgression, then it doesn't matter ultimately whether you trust her or not. You have to do due diligence and trust that which you can establish. So, the fact is, almost never is it okay to sleep with a married woman if you're a man. In my opinion, you have to do a lot of ethical gymnastics. But I still haven't actually answered the question at all as to why it's wrong. The reason it's wrong is for the same reason buying stolen property. Knowingly buying stolen property is wrong. Except for the conditions I articulated already, you are transgressing upon the legitimate claim of another to control/ownership of a resource for the duration of a contract that the two resources enter into with each other. Humans are unique in that we're both objects and agents. We are both resources in and of ourselves and generators of resources. We are both creators and executors. So each party then has engaged in a contractual obligation to each other and has a painful but simple enough way to extricate themselves from that contractual obligation. They have an additional layer of contractual obligation that says they must extricate themselves from the first level of contractual obligation through honest means. And at the end of the day, cheating, if it's actually cheating, is definitionally deceptive. It's not done openly unless you're sadistic and trying to torture the other person or something. It's done under secret of cover of night and done in hotel rooms away from husband's prying eyes and stuff like that, Deception is bad for a reason. It violates reciprocal burdens. When Stacy goes home and Ted's happily talking about his trip and sharing with her openly and honestly what he did the last couple of days, she, on the other hand, has shared her intimacies with Franklin, and she can't share them with him. She now has to keep secrets, but she has to say what she did the last couple of days. So she highlights a couple of the things that weren't involving Franklin, because it turned out they were like hanging out the whole time fucking, basically. Franklin was a young guy, and he's just like, I'm going to fuck this woman all day, all tonight, and then all day tomorrow, because her husband doesn't get home till 3 p.m. I got till about 1. I'll shoot my last load on her face at 2:15, and I'll be out the door. Now Ted's home. Oh, she just got out of the shower, and she's feeling filthy. And Ted's home. But Ted's not feeling filthy, because Ted was at a plumber's convention, and he's telling her about it. But she's acting weird. So he asked what she was up to this weekend. She didn't really have any actual things to tell him, so she got to make some shit up. And part of it included Martha, her friend, but he knows Martha too. So now after the conversation, she got to call Martha and quickly cover for me if he calls me. This is why that shit's evil. It violates the reciprocal burdens rule. Ted's operating on good faith assumption that you guys are both telling each other the truth, and that you respect each other enough to come clean if you do something like that, and let the chips fall where they may, which means the end of the relationship. Relationships can't survive infidelity, not healthily. They can persist as poisoned mutant horror shows despite the obvious need for them to die, but healthy relationships can't occur after infidelity has occurred. There is no recovery or repair from that. Some people will tell you otherwise. They'll say, well, it took a long time, but it's been 15 years and it's fine. Okay, fine. Maybe if it's been 15 years or something. But why would you want to put in all that time of years of getting over the suffering and rebuilding trust and stuff when the whole purpose of a relationship in the first place is to find a person that you trust? I don't want to have to build trust with you to have a relationship. I I want to intuitively gut that you're the right kind of trustworthy and operate on the assumption that you totally are. And it's the only way to have a healthy relationship, to make yourself vulnerable to being betrayed and feeling really fucking destroyed by it. That's the thing. Franklin doesn't know Ted. He knows Stacy. It might be the right thing for Stacy to cheat. For Stacy. And it might be the right thing for Franklin to fuck Stacy neutrally for Franklin. But it can't be the right thing for him to transgress upon a legitimate claim of another man in a way that renders that other man permanently his little bitch, even though he doesn't even know the guy, on the grounds that, well, you know, I tear apart weaker men as a matter of course. No. So, I'll end this by saying, to the extent that I've sinned in these matters, in these areas, over the course of my life, and remember, I've had a long life. I have a life that is stained with sin for decades and decades. I continue to stain the fabric of my life with bits of sin here and there. I will say I am vastly less sinful than I've ever been before. By sinful, I mean willingness to make excuses for shit that I shouldn't excuse. But that doesn't mean I'm invulnerable to it now. And I have this weird bad habit sometimes in general in life of needing to make each mistake, even the ones that are obviously huge mistakes, before I concede to the correctness of my ethical evaluation. Those are my thoughts on this matter and the story of Stacy and Franklin and Brock and Ted. Anyway, it turns out that basically Ted was crushed forever and never really recovered, and Stacy left and was with Franklin for like a month, but then ended up going back to her mom's house, and then everything was shit forevermore. Or maybe Stacy left and went with Franklin, and it turns out they were fucking meant to be. And it actually turned out that after a couple months, Ted realized, oh my God, I am so glad to be done with that bitch. And everyone was happy. And then it turns out Ted got Tatiana, a mail order Russian bride, who actually turned out to be super fucking cool. And sucked his dick like every day and loved the shit out of him. And it was all great. Maybe that. But see, that's why we can't use utilitarian evaluation metrics. That's why we have to use the consistency metrics of TI. And for the reasons I've articulated in this video, it is wrong most of the time for individual solo single men who are not committed to sleep with women who are committed, because it's unfair to the man. And it's a weak ass kind of argument from the shadows. I'm establishing dominance on you without you knowing about it. It's a card I could play at any time, and it's absolutely soul crushing. I don't want to have a nuclear weapon arsenal, especially one I made illegally in secret. I don't want to transgress upon legitimate claims of another, and to the extent such opportunities present themselves, I shall turn them down. To the extent that I have ever failed over the course of my 45 years heretofore in these matters, I regret doing so and apologize to any affected parties. And to the extent that I forget to remind you not to forget to eat plenty of cheese, that's my bad, and I deserve to be punched in the face. Thanks for watching Talking with Famous People. I've been host Eric, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese!